Let's go to Australia and join Catherine Murphy to talk about the celebrating Australian tennis public, I think, after a remarkable Australian Open comes to a conclusion with success in the men's doubles, but more importantly, success in the women's singles as Ash Barty delivers on her incredible promise. Talk to us a little bit about Ash Barty, Catherine, and just how popular a character she is.
Hello, Ger. Hello, Eoin. She is so loved in Australia. It was such an emotional night, and everyone in the crowd was actually really nervous because, honestly, you will not find a human in Australia that doesn't love Ash Barty, or you certainly won't find a player on the tennis tour that doesn't love her. She is just so universally admired and such a good person and such an amazing player. But it was actually so nerve-wracking watching her match because the pressure that she must have been under, or clearly managed to deal with, was just huge because, you know, it had been so long since a woman had won their home slam. It had been 1978, and that was Chris O'Neill all that way back then. And that was talked about all week. And when she walked out into the stadium and the Australian flags, she's walking past them, there's an Aboriginal flag just above her in the crowd, and she's so proud of her Indigenous heritage. It was so emotional. I could hear people around me just saying, I'm so nervous, I can't relax. Like, for a lot of people, it wasn't a really enjoyable match until she got it done. And as she said afterwards in the press conference, Ger, she was so relieved that, you know, now it's done. We can all stop talking about the drought. And, you know, maybe she'll come back and I'm sure she'll win it again, but she won't have to go through all of that pressure. Now, there was some distractions which really helped her during the week. As you said, in the doubles, Nick Kyrgios and Thanasi Kokkinakis, she would have been so relieved to at least have to share the spotlight. But to deliver under that pressure, I'm in awe of what she did.
She's 25, so kind of in a sweet spot for tennis at this stage where you've got the experience. You're still young enough to be able to beat the teenagers who are coming along. And there's a period now where she also has proven it on multiple surfaces too, where she can legitimately lay claim to being the best woman in the world. So what's the future hold for her, and what are her own expectations around that?
Well, would you believe when she was asked about this during the press conference, she straight away said, I can do more. I need to get better in a number of areas. It was quite bizarre. And her coach, Craig Tyser, had done a press conference just before her. And he had said the exact same thing, that there's a lot of things she's still working on. But like you said, she is now part of just this incredible company where, of all the active players today, she is, along with Roger, Rafa, Novak and Serena, the only other player to have won on all surfaces. And the only tournament she hasn't won is the US Open. Now, her coach, it was quite interesting. He was asked by Chris Clary of the New York Times, who I just think is just not just the best tennis writer in the world, he's the best sports writer in the world. And he asked, you know, how's she going to go in my hometown in New York? And her coach, and it sounded really premeditated, he said she can't win the US Open because of the balls they use. They use different balls, which I didn't know, in the women's draw compared to the men's tournament. He says they're too light. They don't suit her game. She won't adapt to it. And he said that's why you'll see, you know, he didn't say those random players who won, but it was a little bit of a, if I was Emma Raducanu, I wouldn't have liked what he said, but he insists that Ash can't win a major in New York while they have those balls. And I'm not an expert on them, Ger, on the technicalities of that.
I'm not either, with the lightness, but it was certainly throwing shade at Emma Raducanu and ramping up a little bit of pressure and ramping up pressure on the organisers. You get to do that when you've won. If she'd lost, that would have been one of those, why are they whining about this? But look, you mentioned the doubles there, and so Ash Barty's had success in doubles, and there was a touching moment with her doubles partner as well, and she seems to have used that as a way of helping her become better at singles. And you know, whatever she's done, everybody's kind of putting that two and two together. Is there any possibility that Nick Kyrgios uses this as a springboard, or is he just having the crack?
Sure, I think he's just having the crack. But honestly, talk about having the crack. Those boys, like, I don't know how they've done it. I think the way they said it was they rolled up the couch and they won a Grand Slam. Like, the fact they made the final was crazy. And it was almost like the victory party for Ash Barty. Like, we've had this amazing Australian woman, the world number one, win. And now it's like the after party, but it's a rock concert. And it was like Nick Kyrgios and Thanasi Kokkinakis, they were playing against two Aussies, Ebden and Purcell, which was a real shame because we didn't get to see the Australian crowd make it really difficult for their opponents, because there were mixed feelings and people were feeling a little bit bad for their opponents, but there's no doubt they had the majority of the support. They look like they're having so much fun. They've been really polarizing here. I, for one, am a huge fan of them. I just think tennis should be for everybody. And it shouldn't be a case of, oh, well, only tennis types should go to the tennis. That's just snobbery. So I've loved what they've done. They've attracted a young, new fan base that are talking about tennis. Certainly the crowd's behaviour in Melbourne changed, but I think there was a few different factors. Like, I, for one, I don't like to hear the crowd calling out between a first and second serve. I think that's really harsh. And that was actually happening both sets of players. In fact, Nick Kyrgios kicked someone out of the stands. The umpire wasn't going to do it. So he just walked up and told this guy who was cheering to just get out. So that's where Nick Kyrgios is at. He's also doing chair umpire from time to time. But I don't think it's all the Special K's fault that sort of crowd element crept in. You have to remember, in Melbourne, we've been locked up for the best part of 2 years. And then you let us all out and you expect us to behave well. I say there are consequences, and I think the crowd is so happy to be out that they're just treating everything like a night out.
Basically, you're saying they're like a GAA team who's been off the booze for 18 months and then wins the club championship.
That's so true. Like, you can't lock humans up and then give them this amazing sports event to go to, and we haven't been out for so long that we just, honestly, we don't know how to behave ourselves anymore.
Is there a way in which this Australian Open doesn't get remembered as the Novak Djokovic Australian Open? Like, are all the positive stories that have happened over the last couple of days, I guess, have they all overshadowed the Djokovic saga in a positive way?
I never thought that was possible, but yes. But I think it took every one of those stories to make that happen. So you had Ash Barty, who's now just an iconic Australian. Dylan Olcott is a quad wheelchair singles champion. He won the Australian Open 7 years in a row. He has such a huge following in Australia. It was his farewell tournament that got a lot of headlines. Sam Stosur, former US Open champion, she also retired from singles. That got a lot of headlines. Then you have Rafael Nadal winning his 21st Grand Slam title and doing it in Melbourne. And Rafa loves Melbourne. And it was quite telling afterwards. He went straight to the tournament director. He hugged him. He talked about how much he loved the tournament. So did all the players after they won. But I definitely think, Owen, you needed every single one of those positive stories combined, because we all know that what happened before the Australian Open was... I don't even have words. I was on a show on Sunday and I was asking one of the other panelists on this sports talk show, do we think if Rafa gets 21, do we think, but, Novak Djokovic should have 22 because he had the default in New York, and I can't believe I'm saying it, deportation. Like, who says that in a tennis chat? But I think all the positive stories have just kind of somehow superseded all of that.
Yeah, Novak's not going away though. We know he's going to be around for another couple of years. He's younger than the other two, and he's not going to stop until he gets it. So, well, at the same time, perhaps they will like ban him for lying on his application. Like that's the other side of this. That world tennis is kind of like, oh, thanks for Australia for handling that. Now let's all move on to the next one. It's like, well, are there no repercussions for falsifying documents or allegedly falsifying documents? Is there nothing? Are you allowed to do that? Because it doesn't seem like you're allowed to do that. So I guess we'll wait and see.
Yeah, and the BBC investigation over the past few days into his PCR tests. And there are questions about that PCR and the timing of it. And so there's a lot of questions for him to answer for sure. And it's not looking good for him playing at the French Open. I heard one of my English colleagues in media say that, it won't be a problem at Wimbledon. He'll be welcomed with open arms. And I'm not sure that the French will stand by that and stop him coming in. I think there's a bit to play out in that, but there are so many questions to be answered by him.
And there's a bit of time as well. Like the world is definitely opening up and deciding that we're all moving on. COVID's over, we've decided, even though it may not be. But yeah, Catherine, great to have you with us. Thanks a million.
Thank you, Jared. Thanks, Eoin. And after that big win over Leitrim, I will be booking the Croke Park Hotel.
Excellent.
They're up to 17th in the power rankings, up one place, the Heady Heights.
Oh, what? 17th?
Yeah. Highest ever possibly for a Division 4 team. So incredible scenes.